We're coming to you live from our studios in Belize City, and this is the evening news on Love Television for Tuesday, August 30th. We'll get you started with a look at the stories that are making the headlines for today. Cabinet ministers share their views of last Friday's events inside the National Assembly. Alliance of Church Ministers and Leaders makes a list of demands. Belize Progressive Party to hold a referendum. UNICEF presents key findings in cluster survey and believes Nature Conservation Foundation awards 2 conservation grants. The government of Prime Minister Dean Barrow remains under pressure following the release of the Auditor General's report into the Immigration and Nationality Department. As has been reported, to the audit names a number of ministers, CEOs, and public officers who were engaged in what could be termed as questionable transactions. During last Friday's House of Representatives meeting, Kyle South Area Representative Julius Espat was forcibly removed from the National Assembly after he got into a back and forth with House Speaker Michael Perifete. That incident has led to the opposition, People's United Party, demanding a Senate inquiry into the transactions within the department. Today, Minister of Housing and Urban Development Michael Finnegan shared his thoughts with us.
I got up and was concerned about civility in the House, and I believe that a member must be allowed to make his or her point, but a member must act within the framework and the guidelines of the law. Man, you cannot get up and say the speaker is mercenary, the speaker is paid to stop you from making your presentation, that members of the other side of the House are thieves. Man, that is uncalled for. That was totally uncalled for. But the member, I will repeat again, have all right to make his presentation, his or her presentation, within the guidelines of the rules of the House. That again was unfortunate. It was unfortunate on Channel 7's part, and it was unfortunate on the police part. Channel 7 have to be so behave in that fashion neither. The police never had to behave in that fashion neither. That's unfortunate. It was totally unfortunate. And the police never act on its own behalf. The police act as representative of the speaker. They were following the instructions of the speaker, whether you like it or I don't like it. They have got to obey the instructions given to them by the speaker, whether you like it or you don't like it.
Minister of State Edmund Castro said it is important that while in the National Assembly, members should follow the rules.
In the House, we must know how to conduct ourselves, and the speaker is the person that runs the operation and the going on in the House. So when the speaker is the only one that can basically the way though really. The person that is in charge of the House is the speaker. We must abide by the rules and regulation of the House. So and the speaker is the one, he like the principal. So you not disrespect your principal, just like go around disrespecting the Prime Minister in Cabinet.
While Cabinet was in session, the Alliance of Churches and other interested groups were demonstrating outside the National Assembly building. The Alliance of Churches and other interested groups gathered in front of the National Assembly building while the Cabinet meeting was going on. Patrick Menzies, president of the Alliance, spoke with us about the symbolic move they were undertaking.
It's a symbolic move. What we're doing is our plan is to deliver a notice to Cabinet today, and this notice is basically based on what we had announced before. And so what we're going to do, we'll be here till about 10:30. About 10:30, we'll take a march, if you would say, probably single file all the way past the U.S. Embassy and come back around, and then we will go around to the administration building where we will deliver this letter to the Cabinet of Belize, and we'll hold off and just relax until they get out. Hopefully they address us. If they don't, not a problem. They have until today at 6 p.m. to respond to certain demands.
Last week, Friday, the Alliance joined other activist groups in a demonstration while the House meeting was going on. The demonstration got out of hand when individuals broke rank and pushed the barrier set up by the police. Menzies stated that it was not members of the church who got into the confrontation with the police, and to avoid a repeat of getting caught up with the political groups, the churches will not be joining the demonstration planned for tomorrow.
We're not coming out here tomorrow, and we're calling on the church not to participate tomorrow, because we are not going to be taken out and pulled into a political fight between the red and the blue. This has nothing to do with red, nothing to do with blue, has to do with Belizeans. And so I call on the church to not participate on any demonstration tomorrow. We will not join because we are not going to be used. So again, the government has till tomorrow. If they do not respond by tomorrow 6 p.m., other measures will be taken. We're not going to waste our time out here until the government decides they will obey the people, period.
No, I was going to go to that point exactly. What other measures are you referring to here? How far are you guys willing to take this?
The Prime Minister said when he was fighting the blue people and he was the opposition, he said everything is on the table. I would like to ask PM what he meant. Whatever he meant is what I mean. Everything is on the table. No options are out of question.
While the churches are demonstrating against the ruling of Section 53, which recognized the rights of the LGBT community, we asked the church about other social issues prevalent in the society that are affecting a majority of Belizeans.
Why doesn't the church care proportionately for other issues affecting Belize other than the LGBT agenda?
Very good question. Let me give you a simple answer. Simple. Number one, the LGBT agenda is destroying society from its core. I prefer to die of hunger and have morality and go to heaven than to die fat, full, to feed the worms in hell. That is what I got to tell you. So yes, the church has an obligation to do exactly what you're saying. But right now, this is the most critical issue. It's more critical than hunger. It's more critical than clothing. This issue deals with eternity. It doesn't deal with the now. It deals with eternity.
So the church here, represented here today, believes that gender policy problems in Belize are more important than the other problems such as poverty and violence?
Yes. At this time, yes. At this time, that is the most critical issue. Kids going to be in school this week and next week. They will be affected by the gender policy. The shooting may affect 20, 30, 40 people in the next 6 months. But the gender policy affects 312,000. That is where our priority is right now.
There were around 100 people gathered at today's demonstration. The Alliance gathered without a permit. At the end of the gathering, the president of the Alliance presented a list of demands issued by the churches last week to Cabinet. They stated that the government has until today to respond to their demands. On August 23rd, we told you of the referendum that the Belize Progressive Party was working on and had promised to have a draft presentation ready for Friday, August 26. It turns out that the document was launched amid the protests that occurred on Independence Hill in Belmopan. The Belize Progressive Party criticized the media in a release issued yesterday for putting more emphasis on what they have described as the sensational spectacle and virtuous performance put on by the PUDP. In addition, the BPP says that they have noticed that the efforts of the church last Friday were hijacked and that it may have slipped by unnoticed that they did launch its efforts towards the people's referendum during the chaos. When we had spoken to the BPP's treasurer, Robert Lopez, he did note that the launch was going to happen.
We want the referendum to be binding. And so if the people vote yes, and we have a majority saying yes, referendums need to be binding, otherwise it's an exercise in futility. So that's one of the things we're going to put down there. So we're looking at possibly it's going to be around 10 propositions that we intend to tag on to the ICJ referendum. And that's the whole purpose of this, is to let's gauge the people on different issues, namely ministerial discretion. We think it needs to be repealed. Get rid of it. It's caused too much problems. They need to go to jail instead. They hide behind ministerial discretion. And more are coming in. I'll share one with you that came in yesterday. The repealing or the taking off gill nets, making gill nets illegal, banning of gill nets. Yes or no? Let's people decide. Fishermen might not want it, but the people might want it. So there's several issues, and this is this is the core of participatory democracy. When you allow your people to engage in the decision-making process and not just rule over them like a dictator. It is the first draft. We intend to see many drafts before this is vetted and approved. We intend to get back feedback from the community, from the media, from the churches. We're already in touch with the churches. And so certainly we intend, this is not going to be a 1 week or a 2 week exercise. We're going to see many drafts, but we just feel that we need to put out the first draft and then let's start getting the feedback from the whole nation.
The release says, quote, simultaneously, the effort was also launched online. By way of this undertaking, unlike any other political party in the history of Belize, the BPP wants to hear from you. Throughout the Friday, August 26 occasion, members of the BPP manned a tent where 23 mock referendum questions were polled. Via that effort, we received over 100 hard copy submissions on a variety of issues ranging from the Chief Justice's ruling on Section 53 of the Criminal Code to the legalization of marijuana, as well as the all-important question of whether the GOB should sign the UN Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, as well as a number of other salient issues. Additionally, we received the contact information of individuals who are interested in aiding with the actual mock referendum the BPP intends to host nationwide. In this regard, your Belize Progressive Party, BPP, urges Belizeans and true friends of Belize, both at home and abroad, as well as those within the business sector, to not be consumed with the white noise that emanated from the well-entrenched political corruption of the PUDP that, like a choreographed theatrical production, unfortunately became the focal point of August 26th House meeting, nor the unfortunate commotion that occurred outside the House, brought on by some who may have been a bit overzealous. Instead, we call on you to lend your support to the only active political party that has entrenched within its constitution the supremacy of God and is ready, willing, and able to do the work of the people. The PUDP share a symbiotic relationship in which hand wash hand, and in the long run, the scourges of nepotism, cronyism, the mismanagement of the nation's resources, and all-out corruption persists, all at the expense of the people. End of quote. The release ended by appealing to the public for their participation in efforts toward good governance. MIX is the acronym for Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey. It is a survey that was carried out for the period 2015 to 2016 in Belize that looked at a wide range of indicators relating to children and women. Today, the overall data was presented via a session inside the Caracol Room of the Radisson Fort George Hotel in Belize City. During the event, we spoke with Jacqueline Small, who presented the key findings in the report.
What we have seen is that over the last 15 years, Belize has made progress towards reducing the level of child mortality. For example, neonatal mortality, which is deaths in the first 30 days of life, went from 15 years ago to 5 per 1,000 live births. That's a big improvement. Another really significant measure of our development is the infant mortality rate. And this went from 15 deaths per 1,000 15 years ago to 9 deaths in the last 5 years. So that is an area where we have made improvement and where MIX has provided really valuable data for us to monitor our development. Another area that we place emphasis on is that of nutrition, because nutrition does affect mortality among children. And so we found that There are still children who are underweight. About 5% of children under 5 are underweight. We have children who are stunted. About 15% of them are too short for their age. And we also look at wasting. Well, we have to give thanks because it's less than 2% of our children that are wasted. That means they're too skinny for their height. However, we seem to be having a bit of challenge with childhood obesity. 7% of our children under 5 are overweight. We also look at vaccination. And again, MIX has helped us to see that we are making strides with our vaccinations. We know that the children are being vaccinated because we have seen the cards as part of the survey. And when we look at the overall level of vaccination, children have been fully immunized. 78% of our children have been fully immunized. That means they get all the vaccines and all the doses that they're supposed to get. However, there is still a little bit of work to be done because about 5% of the children between 24 and 35 months still haven't received any vaccines. So that is something that we will have to look at.
The report has revealed several social issues and how they are viewed by persons between the ages 15 and 49. Paulette Wade is UNICEF's monitoring and evaluation specialist who gave us more details on what it took to carry out the survey and how many persons were interviewed.
This year, for the Mix 5, we covered 5,242 households. Within those households, all men and women aged 15 to 49 was interviewed, and if there were children under 5, the parent or caregivers of those children had to answer a questionnaire as it relates to their health and education. We started in 2014, October, where we looked at whether or not we would undertake, as a country, Mix 5, what it would take, what were some of the indicators that were missing that we wanted to know about, whether or not we would have the funding to do this massive survey, because something like this costs almost $800,000 US. So we had to ensure that those things were in place first, and then having had that and crossed that hurdle, then we decided what would then be the questions that we would ask in the questionnaires.
The report is the result of collaborative efforts with the Statistical Institute of Belize, the Government of Belize, and UNICEF. The survey was done at a cost of $800,000 US and including responses from residents in the 6 districts. Earlier, we told you of the cluster survey headed by UNICEF. The results were presented this morning, with one aspect of it looking at domestic violence and the attitudes of acceptance that was found by both men and women. Paulette Wade, UNICEF's Monitoring and Evaluation Officer, spoke on this particular issue, which she presented on this morning.
When we looked at domestic violence, we look at the attitude, whether or not a woman feels that it's okay for the husband to beat her for not doing certain things, or whether or not the men feel that it's okay to beat their wife for not doing certain things. And if you notice from the presentation, you'll see that even though both men and women felt that it's okay to beat the wife for certain things, what they were beaten for were different. Men showed more emphasis in terms of women wasting their money, and women show a little bit more in terms of the house clean. Like, for instance, a woman felt that it's okay for the husband to beat her for not having the house clean. And the men felt that it's okay to beat the wife for wasting my money. But together and across the board, they both felt that it was okay to beat the wife because they neglected the children. So that was one that was common across.
The report shows that 3.1% of men felt that it was okay to beat women when they are not taking proper care of the children. The percentage is equivalent to an estimated 620 men, while there were a similar amount of women who felt the same way. Love News asked Wade if there were common denominators with those who had accepting attitudes towards domestic violence.
When we would disaggregate the data, we saw that more accepting attitudes of domestic violence were in the south, in Stann Creek and Toledo District. Men and women, as I said, for the most part, if you look at the indicators, were relatively, it was almost the same. So you saw different levels in locations, Stann Creek and Toledo, and in the age range. Like young people also showed that they had accepting attitudes for domestic violence.
Present at this morning's session was the Executive Director for the National Women's Commission, Anne Marie Williams. She told Love News that the Commission is already working on tackling the social issues involving women.
Well, particularly in the area of gender-based violence or in the area of domestic violence, that the data actually showed how men and women respond to violence. A lot of it very shocking, but not different than the mix that Belize did in 2006. It showed you that the attitudes and practices have really not changed. You find that a lot of women felt like it was okay for their partner, men in particular, to beat them if they burnt the dinner, if they neglected the child. And so they felt that way, and men feel that way. That's not a good indication that we will put gender-based or domestic violence behind us anytime soon. There's lots of work to do, and at the Commission, because we have now taken over the National Gender-Based Violence Committee, which is government's national response to gender-based violence, we will definitely have to do some awareness raising in terms of violence. It is not okay for a man to beat a woman under no circumstance, and vice versa. Because violence in a home is indicative of violence in the streets. We often wonder, oh, Belize is so violent, but somehow we tend to make noise when people shoot another person or when there's rampant unrest in terms of gunplay and warfare in the street. But it happens in our very homes, and that is the breeding ground for it. And so this information out of the mix this morning, Mix 5, it's not new, but it shows us that we have to do a lot of work. And it's not only with the Commission, but it begins with all of us, because like I said, it's violence in the home.
While the questions presented in the survey were for women between the ages of 15 and 49, which Wade says was a set target since it is the fertility age range, some men were also interviewed in certain segments of the report. On Monday, the Belize Nature Conservation Foundation, BNCF, awarded 2 grants to assist in the conservation efforts in Belize's protected areas. The Akshay Conservation Trust received a total of $37,888, while the Association of Protected Areas Management Organizations received $38,000. BNCF's chair, Edilberto Romero, said that the grants given out will help to support the conservation of our forests and the management of protected areas. Akshay, for its project entitled Strengthening Conservation Through Community Participation in Biodiversity Research, seeks to collect baseline biodiversity data in key biodiversity areas through the Maya Golden Landscape. Through the collection of this data, they hope to increase community awareness of the importance of biodiversity and biodiversity monitoring techniques towards the understanding and management of our natural environment. APAMO, for its project aimed at strengthening the management of the Mayflower Bokawina National Park, will use its funds towards the development of a pilot management plan for protected areas that are managed by small community-based organizations. It will focus specifically on areas that are susceptible to climate change. While this project will focus on the Mayflower Bokawina National Park, it is the intention that the findings will be shared within APAMO's wider network of associated organizations for the benefit of all. Each year, the Belize Nature Conservation Foundation issued a call for proposals for up to $39,000 to registered NGOs involved in terrestrial protected areas management and conservation. Since 2005, they have granted over $1.7 million and funding to NGOs and community-based organizations. Yesterday, we told you of the press conference held by the People's United party that brought several concerns to the table as it relates to the management of the country and various ministries by the Barrow administration. Taking the forefront of the conference was what transpired in the House of Representatives on Friday. The incident has now led to the opposition demanding that the Speaker of the House, Michael Parafit, resigns.
Let us not forget that the Honorable Julius Espat, the member for Kaya South, was debating the Auditor General's report on immigration, revealing the findings of the worst passport scandal in Belizean history. He was revealing to the Belizean people that this UDP government has issued more than 55,000 fraudulent passports and visas. Honorable Espat was exposing the hypocrisy of the Prime Minister and unprecedented corruption by the UDP administration. He was doing his job. He was serving the people. And so we demand an apology from the Speaker, the immediate lifting of the suspension of Honorable Julius Espat, and the restoration of all his rights and privileges as a member. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, the events at last Friday's meeting of the House of Representatives was an obscene abuse of the power by the Speaker with the complicity of the UDP government. The Speaker showed his bias and unrestrained acts of intimidation against members of the opposition. He disgraced the office of the Speaker. He brought the House into disrepute, and he is a complete disgrace. The Honorable Michael Parafit has consistently allowed members on the government side to hurl insults, impute improper motives to members of the opposition, use unparliamentary language, and even allow members of the government side to disparage the good name of people who are not members of the House, while consistently restraining members of the opposition when we attempt to defend our positions. The Speaker has disrespected the opposition's role and has subjected elected PUP representatives of the people to new and unprecedented levels of contempt by the UDP administration. It is clear that on Friday, he had no right to call for the naming of the member for Kaya South who had already apologized. It was the Speaker who was out of order. This would not be allowed to continue. Enough. The Honorable Michael Parafit has completely lost the confidence of the opposition as Speaker. We therefore demand the immediate removal of Michael Parafit as Speaker.
Parafit has been the Speaker of the House since March of 2012. Santa Teresa Village in Toledo has voluntary solar power board members who are dedicating time to management of their village solar power system. Correspondent Paul Mahong has more on this story.
Electricity made available to villagers of Santa Teresa is currently provided by means of community-level solar power equipment. Operation of the village solar power system is under the management and voluntary services of Santa Teresa Solar Power Board members, as explained by Board Chairman Pablo Max.
The Santa Teresa Solar Power Board is working with the solar engineer, Ms. Florentina Choco. We have 7 members. I, Mr. Pablo Max, the chairperson, and the vice chairperson, Mr. Pedro Bo, our secretary, Mr. Alfonso Cus, our vice secretary, Ms. Florentina Choco, also the solar engineer, and our treasurer is Mr. Martin Max, and the vice treasurer is Mr. Leonardo Teul, and our councillor is Mr. Pedro Ak, the village council chairperson.
Do the board members get paid for their service?
No, actually there is no salary, stipend, it's voluntary, total voluntary work.
How many families in your village of Santa Teresa are benefiting from this solar energy?
We have a total of 72 families having a system.
Pablo Max of Santa Teresa Village. It was on July 23 of this year that an official ceremony in Santa Teresa Village marked the inauguration of the newly installed environmentally friendly solar power services to Santa Teresa inhabitants. This report is sponsored by 3-Star Quality Chicken with specially reduced price on regular whole chickens for all customers this week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at its centers on West Street in Punta Gorda and Vernon Street in Belize City. Reporting for Love News, Paul Mahone, Punta Gorda.
Representatives of UNHCR today handed out donations in villages in western Belize affected by Hurricane Earl earlier this month. Correspondent Fem Cruz has that story.
Some 85 families from the village of Armenia and Valley of Peace here in the Cayo district are today happy to receive some much-needed hurricane relief supplies, thanks to UNHCR, who came to the aid of those families that are in desperate need because of Hurricane Earl. Sofian Ajali, head of the UNHCR National Office of Belize, spoke to Love News about the relief.
This donation came from the Office of the Humanitarian Coordinator through UNDP, the United Nations Development Agency, and UN High Commissioner for Refugee. It is aimed to support people post-Earl hurricane, victims of the hurricane. It is meant to target vulnerable people all across the country, Belizean nationals and other nationals that are living and have been victims of Earl in Belize. That's the whole point of this donation, that is targeting simply basic needs, hygienic kits, mattresses, and some rooftops that have been, roof irons that have been destroyed by the hurricane.
Amilka Amaya, the coordinator, spoke to Love News about the selection of these families.
We went around to see the different families and we found out that there is a lot of need, and there was a large number of people who need help. But what we did, according to their needs, we selected 36 families that were fortunate to get some assistance, and today we are delivering to them. Every family is getting something to relieve from this hurricane. And we are very thankful for the United Nations High Commission for Refugees for assisting our community.
This is Brother Fem Cruz reporting from the beautiful village of Valley of Peace for Love FM.
Today marks day 3 of the Back to School initiative being carried out by the Eastern Division South of the Belize Police Department. It is an activity where police officers are reaching out to the communities on the south side of Belize City and pushing them to pursue an education through the provisions of backpacks for the new school year. Assistant Commissioner of Police Chester Williams heads this initiative, and he spoke on its status and the importance of it.
Hectic day, I must say. And as you notice, more children came than the bags that we had. And we have a policy not to turn away any child. So what we'll be doing, those children who came and were not able to receive a bag today, we have taken down their names, and we will do our best to get the bags for them by Friday. So we'll ensure that they get the bags that they need to go to school. We issued today a total of 130 bags, and 160 children came. So we have a total of 30 more that we need to get to facilitate those who are not able to get today. Yes, like you said, we dealt with Jane Usher, and we have a few from Martin's area who came in, and we have some who came from Southside, and we have some who came who were not on the list or not invited, but nonetheless they are children and they want to go to school, and so we try our best to facilitate them. And we continue with our back to school drive. It's the last one for the year, and we maintain our policy, changing communities one child at a time, and we believe that once we can make these children happy as they go back to school, they will do their best to ensure that they excel in their education, and that's what we want. The only reward from this is to be able to see these young children get an opportunity to go to school with their basic school needs. And from a police standpoint, I am happy to say that we were able to assist them in this regards. I continue to say special thank you to Belize Social Security Board. They provided majority of the bags. Tony's also provided some, the police officers who contributed. Big thank you to them. Without them, this initiative would not have been possible.
ACP Williams and his team were in the area of Jane Ushard Boulevard today. The Inter-American Convention for the Conservation and Protection of Sea Turtles is holding a 3-day workshop at which representatives of 15 countries from Latin America gathered to discuss how to improve the protection of sea turtles as they migrate from country to country. Veronica Caceres, Secretary of the Inter-American Convention, spoke with us about the gathering.
This is a unique convention, a unique treaty that involves 15 member countries. The objective of the convention is the protection, recovery and conservation of sea turtle populations of 6 species of sea turtle, the 6 species that in the Americas. And Belize is a member country to this convention. And so there is a deep commitment of the authorities in Belize and the Belizean government to work with other 14 countries to make conservation actions directed to only sea turtles. So and this meeting is the scientific committee of the convention, where here we have scientists from 15 different countries, and they're coming to Belize to make recommendations on sea turtle management measures for all the countries that are members of the convention.
Chairman of the Scientific Committee, Diego Alvarado, spoke with us about the recommendations coming out for the different countries involved.
We have to think that these animals are migratory animals, and we need that all the countries that have sea turtles work together to try to conserve and protect them. It's very important because we have different countries have different areas. For example, in my country it's only feeding area. We don't have nesting area, but our turtles, their nesting area in Brazil, some of them in Venezuela, and other in Gabon, Africa. If we don't work together with other countries, it's impossible to protect them. We have to share the same objectives. We have to share the tools that we have to need to protect the sea turtles, because it's very important that the conservation in the nesting area and in the feeding area are together.
Manager of the Ecosystems Management Unit at the Fisheries Department, James Asueta, stated that Belize has taken measures to protect the migratory marine animals.
Belize is far advanced from a lot of the recommendations that the IAC is making, in that we have completely protected all the marine turtles. So there's no taking of any turtles in Belizean waters. They are fully protected, the nests are protected, and the eggs are protected. We have enforcement, and we also have a good educational campaign where the people now, they realize that, turtles are bringing more money, right, as tourist attractions than people eating them, as they used to do one time before. We are protecting all the turtles. So what we have to do is enforcement and more education. A lot of the other countries, they still don't have protection or full protection of their turtles in populations. So they will be the ones that will be adopting some of the discussions that are coming from here.
The workshop ends tomorrow. The provision of school bags for the young students from the South Side divisions in Belize City is only the start of an education and mentorship program that the Belize Police Department, under Assistant Commissioner of Police, will be carrying out. His plans will be a somewhat costly venture, as it will take money and time. ACP Williams spoke with us on his plans.
I always try to be innovative in my style of policing, and we are currently working on a concept document for a mentorship program. And the mentorship program, we are hoping to launch it by the end of September. And again, coming through the community policing, we are out there currently looking at the children who would want to be a part of the mentorship program and how it will work. We will have 2 police youth mentorship club, one for males and one for females. Because we understand that the needs for both gender is different. And what we'll be looking at is basically children who are at risk of getting involved in gangs or criminal activities, children who show a propensity for violence in school, bullying, and where the females are concerned, teenage pregnancy, and children and girls who are vulnerable to sexual exploitation. And what we'll be doing as a part of that mentorship program is to coordinate with the different youth groups across Belize City. We will partner with YWCA, YMCA, YES, YES, and Department of Youth Services, and other NGOs who are also involved in youth activities. And we'll be looking to these NGOs and government organizations for persons who are willing to come and do part-time mentorship. And the club will meet every Saturday for 3 to 4 hours on Saturdays. Both clubs will meet separately, and we'll bring in the mentors to do mentorship on different subject areas, some of those that I have mentioned earlier, and we'll also be assisting them with after school.
According to ACP Williams, his plans go beyond education as he hopes to instill community spirit among the residents in the South Side areas.
A part of that is to also look at tours within Belize City, because some of the children did not know entire Belize City. Look at tours within Belize City and tours outside of Belize City. And we also will be looking at having an ice cream day or a movie day that we can take them to probably Princess to watch a movie, or take them to eat ice cream somewhere. But these activities are things that we will ask the public to sponsor for us. I don't think it will take much. We're hoping to have in each club at least 50 children. So the costing will not be too much. And where the trips are concerned, the police department will bear the cost with our bus and fuel. But when it comes to feeding, we'll ask again for sponsorship from business places to assist us. So I'm putting it out there from now that that's the next thing in the pipeline. It's a big thing for us because we all know that many of these young people, they're very vulnerable to be led astray, and they do need mentorship. So we're hoping that from a police standpoint, through our community policing initiatives, that we can provide the level of mentorship that they need for them to be able to become productive, law-abiding citizens.
This phase is expected to begin after the schools reopen. Our thought conditioner for today is from Bruce Lee. It reads, quote, "A goal is not always meant to be reached. It often serves simply as something to aim at." End of quote. This has been the Evening News on Love Television, and we invite you to log on to our website at www.lovefm.com for transcripts of our news stories. Thank you for joining us. Have a safe and enjoyable evening. We'll see you tomorrow. I am Taryn Butcher.